Hello, welcome to the Peace Among Friends podcast. So, today we have a really nice show planned. We are going to be talking about boundary setting. So, we are going to be looking at how to set healthy boundaries for you. And if that's something that you are interested in, keep listening. Last week, we talked about cognitive distortions and how important self talk is. The things that we say to ourselves really have a lot of weight and can largely impact our emotions. So, if that's something you're also interested in, check that out afterwards. But again, today we're going to be looking at boundary setting. So whenever we talk about boundaries, we're talking about the, limits that you're setting within your relationship. It's how you tell other people what's okay, what's not okay. So a good way to start kind of wrapping your head around it is think about two different people in your life and think about the dynamics of your relationship. How are they similar? How are they different? As you look at that, you might start to see, how you have different sets of boundaries with different people. And, the things that are similar is kind of your core set of boundaries, what is important to you. Whenever we're looking at values, we're looking at the things that are most important in your life. And so ideally, you want your boundaries to reflect your values. So, like for example, if you really value your family time or your time with your friends, building those kind of relationships, then you might set more strict like work time boundaries, like especially if you have, a family at home that you're taking care of or that you're, just generally a part of. You might have more stricter boundaries with your work. If your finances are something that you're, really trying to focus on, maybe you're saving up for something big like a car or a house, kind of more long-term financial planning, then your values would be reflected in your boundaries as far as your work life goes. You might have to have more strict relationships and have to kind of pull back on some of those relationships and, an effort to be able to meet your financial needs. Personally, whenever I was in school, that was something I really had to, balance and, juggle was I really didn't have a lot of free time. I was working and going to school and I had kids and a husband. So I had a lot on my plate and I really didn't have a lot of social time. So one thing that I did, and that was actually recommended to me by my professors, was whenever we were starting our internship, was to kind of have a conversation with some of the people closest to you and to let them know, hey, I'm going to be, dealing with a lot this next, whole year. It was like an 11-month process. So I had to have that conversation with people and let them know, I'm not going to be around as much. I'm going to have a lot on my plate. If you don't hear from me, it's, not that I'm not available. It's just I have a lot of stuff going on. And it's important to communicate with people, let them know like, hey, if you don't hear from me for a couple weeks, like if you wouldn't mind just checking in every once in a while, because, again, I got a lot of stuff going on this year. And, if you have other people around you who are kind of on the other side of that, now that I'm out of school, I have one of my really good friends. She's, working like two jobs and she's getting her master's degree. So I 100% know how tough it is and just how much is on her plate. So I try to just reach out to her, at least every week and just say, hey, how's it going? Anything I can help you with? Are you doing good on everything? Just like to check in. And it's nice, whenever you have that freedom to set your own boundaries, it helps you to be more aware of other people and what other people have going on, and being able to extend that to them is very empowering. It makes you feel like you're in control of what you want, what you're looking for, and being able to communicate in that relation and being able to communicate that in your relationships is very important and can definitely help your life go a little bit more smoothly. So whenever we're talking about boundaries, there's two main different types. There's what we call rigid boundaries and what we call porous boundaries. So whenever we're looking at rigid boundaries, that would be people who have, very little wiggle room. Their boundaries are, very, like, this kind of person would be very reluctant to ask others for help. They may be very protective of their personal information. They might be kind of avoidant of close relationships. They might have some issues with attachment in that sense. And you can have some good aspects of that. There might be times in your life where you need to have more rigid boundaries, where you might need to, kind of take care of yourself a little bit and kind of have people a little bit more at a distance. I think we all have had times like that where we just kind of need to work on ourselves. And that's perfectly okay. And one of the things that I always try to tell clients, especially if, we're doing therapy and I know kind of more of the backstory of what they're going through, of just letting them know to have that conversation with people. Because I have seen clients, especially even in group therapy, of people who were kind of friends inside and outside of group. And, seeing some kind of hurt feelings of people saying, like, I really wanted to, be able to talk to you. I've been calling, but, you haven't really been answering. And then, the person on the other side, I know what they're going through, and them kind of saying, yeah, I just got a lot going on. But you can kind of help to avoid that awkwardness and, maybe feeling of uncomfortableness that the other person might have if you just kind of have that conversation beforehand of just, let them know, like, hey, I'm kind of going through a lot. So if you don't hear from me from this next week, don't take it personally. I'm just really trying to, work on this issue. I have XYZ going on. And that way too, if that, person, you're kind of modeling a good positive behavior in that sense. So that way your friend, might be able to reciprocate the next time that they have something going on. They'll kind of let you know, oh, hey, I got a lot going on, so you might not hear from me this week. And then there's, less chance of a hurt feelings and all that. And then on the other side, if, you're going through a lot and you need to reach out for help, you can say, like, hey, this week's really hard. If you could just check on me, every once in a while, just, check in, see how I'm doing. Sorry about that phone notification. Let me turn that on silent. All right. So yeah, you would just want to let people know, check in, having that open communication is very healthy in relationships. And again, on the other side of that is the porous boundaries. So people who have more porous boundaries tend to overshare a lot of personal information. They might have difficulty saying no. They may be really concerned about the opinions of others. And on the flip side, they would be more likely to ask for help, more likely to kind of let people know, hey, this is everything I have going on this week. So there's pros and cons of both sides. Sometimes we're in a place where we need to have a little bit more rigid boundaries. Sometimes we're in a place where we might feel more open and feel like we have a good support system around us and we can share. But you really want to kind of stay somewhere in the middle. You want to make sure that, you're also taking care of yourself and that you're not just relying on the people around you to get you through the day. Of course, if you're, in a situation of a crisis, we all have times where we need extra help. But we definitely don't want to put that sole responsibility on the people around us. We do need to take control of our own lives and, make sure that we're building a diverse support system. So not, just one person or two people are being overloaded with everything. And that is where a therapist can be very helpful too. If you are going through a lot and, it seems like more than just your regular support system is able to handle, that's a good time to say, hey, I might need a little extra help here, and look into, seeking out a therapist or working with a paraprofessional who might be able to help with some of those things. So sometimes when we have relationships, healthy boundaries can just form naturally. They're super easy. It's not anything you actually have to think about or worry about. You can just kind of, have a very natural relationship with someone, and, you're both attentive to each other. You're both able to share an appropriate amount and, have that positive bond. But sometimes you do have to work on it, especially if you're, in a romantic relationship. You might have to work a little bit harder to make sure that both of you are being equally taken care of. And communication is one of the best ways that you can do that. And whenever I say communicating, I mean, being open and honest, not having arguments, but, being able to communicate what are your needs? What are you looking for in this relationship? And by, even if you're talking to someone and you're like, well, they're never going to understand, they're never going to get it, you're kind of cutting off that communication before you even give them a chance. You need to at least have that conversation where you say, hey, I'm going through this. I need this. Like, this is what I would love to have from you in this way. The more specific you are, the better. And then by doing that, you're giving them the opportunity to say, okay, well, this is what I would also need. So by doing that, you're both taking care of each other. You're both making sure that your needs are being met and that you're meeting each other in the middle. So if as you're listening to this, you're thinking like, yeah, I would love to set healthy boundaries in my relationships, but you might feel kind of weird, especially with something that you're not really used to. There's a great way to start, and they're called I statements. So these are really good for people working through like anger management. I've taught anger management before, and I statements are really helpful. They're really good in couples therapy also. And essentially what an I statement is it's a way to communicate with someone very simply, and it kind of helps to reduce feelings of blame. So sometimes in relationships, you might say, well, I need this from you. And they could say, well, I did, they might feel like they're being attacked almost. So in an effort to not have that attack defense dynamic start to come up, we use I statements, because that way you're only saying your side. You're just saying what you feel essentially. And feelings can't really be argued with. If you say, I think this or you did this, then that's something that can make people get offensive or defensive on. So again, we use I statements just to help conversations go a little more smoothly. So an example of how to do it is you would say, I feel, and then you would insert an emotion word. And then you would say when and explain it. So I feel emotion, when explanation. So an example of this would be like, I feel sad whenever you don't come home on time, or I feel lonely whenever you don't answer my phone calls, something like that. So an example of like a blaming sentence would be, you keep coming home so late, it's so inconsiderate. Versus an I statement would be, I feel worried when you come home late, I can't even sleep. So it's just like a little bit of a difference. You're still saying like, hey, you're coming home late and it's making me upset, but you're not doing it in a blamey way. You're more saying like, hey, I feel worried about you. Could we come up with some kind of solution here? Maybe you could, just give me a text message just so I know you're okay and I can go to sleep and not worry about you. Another example would be the blaming sentence would be, you never call me, I guess we just won't talk anymore. Versus an I statement would be, I feel hurt when you go so long without calling. I'm afraid you don't care. So that way you're really kind of cutting to the issue. Are you more concerned about the frequency of phone calls, or are you more hurt and are you just feeling like the person might not care? So then that way you can have, that open discussion of, oh, well, I do care, or, I don't want you to feel that way. I just have XYZ going on. And let's see, another one could be, so here's like a practice example. A friend always cancels plans at the last minute, and recently you were waiting for them at a restaurant. They called to say that they couldn't make it. So we're going to come up with an I statement that you could say back to the situation. So you could say like, you jerk, how dare you? I got all dressed up. I'm waiting here and now you're going to tell me that you're not coming. Are you kidding me? So, you could say that, but you probably won't have such a great conversation afterwards. And especially if it's, someone that you want to keep in your life, they might just be kind of flighty. You could say, I feel disappointed whenever you don't show up. I feel like I can't really depend on you. You could say, I feel hurt whenever you cancel plans at the last minute because it feels like you're not really taking my time into consideration. And then you can even do like a suggestion on top of that. Like if you are going to have to change plans, if you could just let me know a little bit before time, or, if you could just try to communicate with me a little bit sooner, because this is something that's, happened a few different times. It's not just this one time. And if it is just one time, you want to try to be a little flexible. Sometimes we don't want to have our boundaries too rigid. We want to be a little bit more porous in that sense and say, okay, well, life's not always perfect. Sometimes people have things that come up. It stinks that I went through all this effort and they're not here. But, try to extend that same consideration. And hopefully the person, if you come to them like that of, hey, this isn't the first time this has happened. I just kind of feel like you're not really taking my time into consideration. I would really like if you could communicate with me and work with me in that sense. And if they're a good friend, then hopefully they'll be considerate of that. And if not, then you might have to work on a little bit more boundary setting with that person. So another scenario would be you're working on a group project with someone, and let's say one person's not completing their work and you've like had to repeatedly, work harder to finish stuff for them just to make sure you get a good grade. So you could say, I feel frustrated whenever you're not finishing these assignments. I feel overloaded because I'm having to do so much more extra stuff. And just by saying like, that I feel statement instead of just saying like, you're not doing your work, it kind of can help that person to, not get so defensive and be like, oh, snap, I'm doing something here that's affecting the way this person feels instead of them just pointing a finger at me. So another one could be like if your boss keeps putting work on you, like not a lot of instruction, not a lot of time, you're working really hard, but you're just not able to get it because it's just too much. This is something I've dealt with before. It's not fun, and sometimes you have to be a little bit more gentle with the way you say things because it is an employment situation and you don't want to get fired. You want to keep your job. And so a good way to say that is like, I'm feeling overwhelmed by, these deadlines you're putting on me. I feel like they're a little unrealistic. I feel like I'm not getting the support I need to do my best on these assignments you've given me because I really want to do well. I take pride in my work and I want to, get this done the way you want it done. I could just use a little help. I'm feeling like I need a little something more. And, if you're able to really be specific, the more specific, the better about what you need from that person, especially if it's your boss, if it's, realistic, of course, like, I could need a little more guidance, if you could give me a little bit more instruction so I can make sure I'm getting this done the way that you want it to be done. So those are just a couple scenarios on how to set healthy boundaries. And, it's something that kind of takes practice and that I've learned is kind of different with some people. It's a little easier with some people over others. Sometimes you have to kind of learn someone's language and like how to talk to them. Sometimes you do have to just say like, I think we are incompatible. And sometimes you have to set that boundary for yourself. You have to decide, like we talked about earlier, what are your values? What are your lines in the sand? If you continuously give someone a boundary that's your line in the sand and they continuously cross it, you have to do an action. You might have to have that conversation with them that says, hey, I've told you repeatedly that this is an issue for me and I feel like you're ignoring it whenever you continuously cross this boundary I've set. And if you continue to do so, then we're, not going to be able to have a relationship together anymore, and that would make me really sad because I enjoy your company. And, I really would hope that you would take me a little bit more seriously when I ask you, plain and simply for certain things. And, if there's something I'm doing that's upsetting you, please let me know because I want to make sure I'm taking your boundaries into consideration, by even having that chance to say like, hey, checking in on their boundaries, it kind of gives you that segue to say, like, hey, we're mutually doing this. It's not just like all on you. Like, I'm here too, and I'm here to support you as well. And, I have seen that just kind of going about it in that sense kind of helps things to go a little bit more smoothly, especially if you have that preemptive conversation, if you're able to talk about something before it's even an issue. So that's just a little bit on setting some healthy boundaries. If you have anything you want to add in the discussion, feel free to comment wherever you're listening to. And now we're going to move on to our challenge section. So last week we talked about cognitive distortions, and our challenge was to try to be more mindful of some of the distortions that we're having. And one of the ones that I definitely noticed myself having was the magical thinking of like, if I do A, B, C, D, then everything will work out perfectly because that is the way the world should work. And that has not been the case. So I've had to kind of catch myself and say, like, okay, I might need to, regroup, rethink, and restructure while moving forward. And just kind of being mindful of that, it's helped me not to get so frustrated. So if you guys have anything you wanted to share from last week, as we talked about cognitive distortions and some of the different thinking patterns that we can get stuck in, feel free to comment below. Today, we are going to be doing a healthy boundary challenge. So I challenge you this week to think about, what are your values and boundaries? What is important to you? What are boundaries that you would like to set in your life that would help you to, meet your goals, to feel more positive during the day, to feel less overwhelmed, less stressed out? And I, challenge you further to act on those, to make sure you're communicating them to the people around you, and to try to get a little more concrete with the boundaries that you have set and that you would like to set. If you'd like to share anything about boundaries, please do so in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys, and I'm sure other people would like to read them as well. They might be able to learn something. I would love to learn something from you as well. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to hear more. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, and, congratulations on taking this time to take care of yourself and to work on your mental health. It is not easy. It takes a lot of self-love and courage to work on your own mental health. So just go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back. All right. Good job, guys. And thank you again so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.